Alright, so this one is on developing imaginary sight, etheric sight, and just any other kind of sight and sense that you would use in magic. Now, if you've ever looked into the sky with a relaxed view around any time when there's light outside, you'll notice, so not nighttime but daytime, you'll notice that there are these little sparks of light that float around and fly about. And I don't mean the floaters in your eye. These are very noticeable sparks. If you get a white piece of paper and you go outside and you bring the piece of paper up to the sky and you lightly gaze at it, so you relax your sight, I recommend you do that, and you'll see these little sparks of light. Now what they are, I don't really know. I imagine if there might be some kind of beings of light, kind of like light insects or something. So maybe there's like a sprite, we can call it. It's kind of like a spirit, a little spirit being, a little sprite. So the flora and fauna of the spiritual realm. Now, of course, spirit is air, and then there is the next level, the mystical level of fire. So we're learning to see into these realms, and then the third level, which is electricity, which is usually invisible unless you produce high voltage arcs of electricity and plasma, and then it converts to plasma, etc., etc. These little sprites are also visible when you have fermentation, funny enough. If you've ever watched hay ferment outside, you will see these sprites. If you look in a relaxed manner, they seem to be attracted to the heat, to fermentation, to nitrogen as well. They could be beings of nitrogen, I'm not sure. I've also had when I've tipped fermenters outside. I don't recommend doing that, to be honest. There's better ways to go about it. Yeah, I've tipped fermenters of like fermented rice and other grains outside, and they seem to be very attracted to that. So go try that out for yourself to see it. Next experiment is to see what we think of as the etheric aura. Excuse me. Now the etheric is more like electrical, is the way that I see it. So this is kind of just the ambient electricity that your body is giving off. Now I can see this instantly if I hold my hands up to a wall. Not like holding it right straight to the wall, but holding it upwards. There's a wall in front of me, I'm holding my hand up, and I'm looking at my fingers, and they have this kind of glow around them. Now what color is this glow? I'm not really sure. It doesn't look like a color, to be honest. It looks like this weird kind of staticky mist, or not really a mist, but like an electrical, like an electrical mist. If I focus on my hands, it is more prominent. I recommend you do that. That will show you how to see the etheric aura. Is that you look at your hands, you hold them upright against the wall, and you will see, and then you kind of relax your gaze and you look around the hands, somewhat with the peripheral vision, somewhat with the main vision, and you will see something. You can move your hands around a little bit. You can focus in your hands to thicken the aura. That is another exercise to do. Now, if you look at people's heads and you kind of relax, and if someone is going through a moment of ecstasy, if it is rage, they will look red. There will be a red aura. If they are going through intense thought, they're thinking about logical things, or very thought-orientated things, they will have a blue aura around their head. This will only be visible for a little while, and you may startle yourself because it's quite intense, and you may lose your relaxation. I find white is more a general color when it's just a general form of energetic ecstasy. Green is more of a social form. Once I saw a woman trying to sell some kind of, I don't know, service about the environment or something. And she had a beautiful green aura. I didn't care about the service, but I stared at her aura very intently, and I thought it was wonderful. I thought she might think me as crazy if I told her I saw that. In retrospect, I wish I did say something. She probably would have, been a little bit startled, but a little bit, but she would have maybe found that interesting. What other aura colors? I've actually never seen or never noticed other aura colors, to be honest. Now, objects as well, plants. If you look at plants, I recommend you go out once you get the idea with the hands. Look at plants, and you can do this most times where there's light. So, moonlight, you can do it when there's moonlight, and you can do it during the day. So you look at plants close up, look at the bodies of them, or further away, you look at the leaves and such, and you'll see this aura around them. Now, most items and objects have auras as well. Even inanimate dead objects, their auras are very weak, but there is an aura to it. Now, if you focus on something mentally, for example, you have a bowl in front of you, and I have this bowl right here, and I'm focusing on it. You just keep focusing and shrouding the bowl in magical energy, so mentally shrouding the bowl with your focus. Eventually, the bowl will radiate, and you can move the bowl away, and you might see a holographic bowl image of where it was. That doesn't work. Imagine light around the bowl. Imagine the bowl is, glowing. Or imagine trying to push it, trying to pull it, push it, move it. Eventually, if you get relaxed enough, you will see the same etheric aura, which is very interesting. So we notice that there are, currently we have 2 sites. Currently, we have more, but we have 2. Number 1 is a regular physical site, which is physical objects, and also whether we want to call the clouds a physical object, it's of course, anything above the ground is, we think non-physical. So the sky and clouds are non-physical, the sun is non-physical, but so I guess we can actually call the sun and the sky and all that is more like a deeper etheric, like a thick ether. Excuse me, we call it that. So when you look up at that blue sky, that's a very thick ether. We can think of very thick electrical glow. If you look at the sun, it's an intense ether. It's an intense etheric object. Okay, so we'll have it as that. If you look down at the earth and the trees and the objects and the cars and people, these are physical objects. Some of them have stronger auras, or have other non-physical qualities, but for sake of reference, they're physical objects. Okay, so we have these 2 things, spiritual and physical objects, and etheric aura is the more spiritual. Now there is a 3rd site, which is imagination site. I believe they call this astral site. Okay, so astral site is your imagination, simply. Now, if you've ever fasted, and I don't recommend any of these things, I'm just going to put that out, I don't recommend, you don't need to do any of these things, and actually I recommend you learn how to do it without them, because if you use these things, you don't really gain anything. You get an experience, but you don't gain anything. But anyway, now that I've said that, if you do number 1, which is fasting, and number 2, taking psychedelic drugs, and usually combining them, and then number 3 is meditation, or practicing this or saying, you will see both etheric auras, and you will see number 3, which is imaginary things. How do you know whether you're imagining something or whether it's the imagination is quote unquote a real imagination? Now, what does that mean? Sometimes, if I imagine a little happy gnome dancing in front of me, I've imagined it. If I look through my imagination at what is in front of me, I can see things, right? You can too if you practice. So what I'm doing is I'm looking with my imagination at the world around me, and I'm seeing things which are imaginary, of course. Now these things are made up of, mental energy, and if they get strong enough, they can have a effect on reality. So right now, I'm just gonna purge the room to because there's some weird stuff around. I don't want to be disrupted. Okay, so a real world effect is that while making this video, I had a bit of a sore throat, and now that I've purged the room, it's gone away. So was there something in the imaginary world that was giving me a sore throat? Yes and no. I would actually explain that because I was expanding my energy outwards, my throat seemed to get healed. And because I cleaned out the room energetically, I opened up a little. So yes and no. If you go too much into that, if you practice too much magic with no grounding, you go fucking crazy. Just keep that in mind. The ultimate test is if you can't realistically, make something happen with magic, and you've got to humble yourself and say, okay, well, maybe I'm not that strong, so it's not that real. But of course, there are, magic definitely does things. People have opened doors. I mean, I remember once I fixed a car with magic. I had to do it as a joke. I walked around it, chanting and doing moving a stick that I found in the ground as a joke, and then it ended up working. And I think one of my past friends he kind of knew what I was doing. He liked that stuff a little bit, and he kind of recognized. The other one just thought, oh wow, it just magically worked. What happened? He didn't really care for that. So this shit can work, but anyway. So the third one is imaginary sight, and what I just told you is that you can look through your imagination and see things which exist imaginationally in reality, so to speak. And this is one way that people see ghosts. Of course, if a ghost, there is the in-between world, which is, I believe, the etheric world, which is, I believe, a ghost can physically manifest enough to get to that etheric level. Personally, I also think they can become physical, They can maybe, if they're strong enough, inhabit an object. But that's a whole other video. But yeah, this is how you see quote-unquote magical beings and quote-unquote magical or astral things. This is how you astrally project. Now, of course, at the end of the day, we are playing in our imagination. This is the play of children, so to speak. At least when I was a child, I spent a lot of my time in my imagination. Maybe I was disassociating and that wasn't healthy, but alas, that's what happened. So let's go over how to train it and practice it. Okay, so I'm going to go over in my book, Mental Magic Basics. This is page 9. Firstly is the imagination exercises, which gets you to imagine two-dimensional geometry in your mind. So what you want to do is you want to close your eyes and you want to imagine either a white or a black field. For me, passively, it's just a black field. Then you imagine a circle, a square, or a triangle. You can do them all out of light. If you can't imagine it out of light, imagine it like a thin piece of, I don't know, toast, or piece of like plastic or metal or something. I like light, so I'm imagining a sphere, not a sphere, a ring of light, of white light. You can do it out of blue light. You can make the whole sphere, ring. You can make the whole ring like a thick, in the middle, filled in with light, whatever. And then you will move it around, move it up and down, and left and right, and in the X angles. So, as I've shown in other videos, in the in-between angles. Then you want to flip it. You want to flip it like you're flipping a coin, all different angles. So the up to down, I think I have a little diagram. You see how this is flipping? This is the best way I could have explained it and draw it. I know it's not perfect, but you see this little circle. See how it's kind of getting thinner, and and then it pops out the other side, so it's flipping, flipping that way. This one's rotating the other way. I wish I used the word flipping. That'd be better, but oh well. Anyway, then you can make it smaller and larger. So I'm shrinking my little ring and I'm flipping it around and I'm making it bigger and I'm flipping around. If you ever played in a 3D video game editor, this is basically what the geometry editor does. You are building that into your mind. Next is to use solids, geometrical solids. Okay, so this is basically just imagining a square, a ball, or a pyramid. Okay, so you do that. Imagining a square. Square? No, a cube. A cube, yes. Imagining a cube. Okay, and I'm moving the cube around, and I have a plane. I made a plane, which is basically a flat floor, so the cube can fall onto the plane. And moving the cube around. The cube is made out of, I don't know, some kind of matte colored blue material, maybe like a thick plastic. So you do that. You practice your imagination. Then, here we go. This might help you out. This is a visual diagram. See these sides, how it's going off to the side there? This is what it looks like in all 8 or 9 dimensions. That might help you. Now, if I gave you any more of this book away, then I would, yes, I would be, I don't know, I wouldn't make as much money. So, so I'm afraid that's all you get of this. But I will continue to explain the exercises in hopes that it will help you. Okay, after you've done that, you can begin to start imagining, real world things. I don't recommend you imagine real people. You can think of maybe, I don't know, animated characters or 3D characters, or you can imagine them as humans as well if you want. But just for the sake of, I hope the wind outside's not too hard. Hang on 1 second. Okay. Yeah, you can imagine, as I said, don't imagine real people because you could accidentally curse them or do stuff magically with them. So you don't want to do that. So just imagine, a person you made up or a cartoon character or whatever. Imagine a house, give it some furniture, give yourself a backyard, and just zoom around it like a little ghost. And just practice that. Just practice, phasing through the walls and looking at everything and doing all that kind of stuff. You can then imagine yourself in a body. So make up a body. You kind of just. I think of something like wireframing, which is basically imagining like a string coming out of like your visual center, I guess, which is kind of meant to be the arms and then the legs, and then you fill it in, you kind of fatten it out. That's one way to think about it. Or you can just like imagine a body and then ghostly possess it, something like that. Anyway, you want to do that, and you want to kind of interact with the world and walk around and blah blah blah. And there you go. Then you can play around in your imagination and do all that stuff. Okay, next is this is how to actually get your imagination more physical. More in reality, so to speak, which is a bit weird until you kind of get it. I think this might be what like schizophrenic people suffer from, except they can't control it. So who knows, maybe if they practice this more, they would be able to control it. Personally, I think you can, unpopular opinion, but I think you can basically fix most physical and mental issues. That's just my, if not everything, it's just that we need to have either the internal technology or the external technology. I do think you can pretty much fix anything. But yeah, so I think a lot of people they of course, here's the thing, magic can trigger like schizophrenia and all that, but I guess it's a double-edged sword. So sometimes the thing that you fix yourself with is the thing that you can destroy yourself with. So take it as it is. Anyway, you want to just sit or stand and relax, and you want to imagine a ring around you. Now, imagine it around the room, so it's like kind of touching the walls of whatever room you're in, if that helps. So it's like a square, a square ring. In a square shape, I mean, the ring is. No, not in a square shape, excuse me. But it's kind of bordered in a square. So it's not like a stretched out, saggy ring, it's just a regular ring. And imagine this ring of light. I imagine a blue ring. And try to see it in front of you. So it's like you're seeing the room, the wall, or your computer, or whatever, and you're also seeing this ring of light around you. Technically, you're hallucinating this. This is how you hallucinate regularly. And then you want to just move this ring up and down, and you shrink it, and you kind of, you turn it, you flip it around, and you rotate it, etc., etc. Similar to the other exercises, except now you're doing them outside in your physical space. You're just overlaying the mental hallucination. So that's a very big tip, or very key of magic. You want to practice that. So that's how you do it. Now, once you've kind of got the idea of hallucinating things, for example, it's kind of like a video game. You can spawn people in. Just imagine, people in the room with you. It might creep you out a little. This is kind of how you do, spirit summoning and such. You imagine them eventually, if you do it right, and you have like some spiritual mediums. Your blood is a good one, or some various incenses. You'll kind of hallucinate them there so strongly that it like exists in the etheric world as well. So it's just your astral imaginary. Very interesting once you see it or hear it or whatever. Very interesting. So yeah, you do that, and I'm doing it right now. I can see people in the room with me, and despawn them. Make sure you learn how to despawn things, so how to like evaporate things, or make it go into dust, so to speak. Because you don't want to, it's like those people with the tulpa. They imagine it too much, and it gets locked in their head or their imagination, and then they start seeing it in reality, and it starts having effects on people. Of course, that probably won't ever happen because they do it for hours upon hours, to the point where they basically make themselves go crazy. But yeah, do know just how to despawn objects, which, as I said, makes them how to get rid of them, so to speak. Now you need to kind of get the feeling of that enough. You need to practice it enough, hallucination enough, that you can then activate your passive imagination. Now, your passive imagination, if you can't do this yet, just close your eyes and relax your head and kind of stimulate your brow, your inner middle head center, so your third eye chakra. And then start to imagine things a little bit, and let those imaginations just do whatever they want. You can imagining myself in like a canoe or a little boat, just traveling down a river. Well, there's a little monster that spooked me. Now I've imagined, let's shoot light at it, and he got roasted now. He's sinking away into the river. What a terrible imagination. Anyway, now there's a unicorn that's greeting me, and that cheered me up a little bit. I'm just traveling down the river. It's like nice evening. You want to get to the point where you'll kind of see active imaginations when you're forcing things, when you're making things happen. Passive is when you're letting it happen. do a little bit of both. If you're too passive, you'll get trapped into weird hallucination or weird dreams, and that's not so good. So you just want to learn how to kind of like passively dream, but also to keep enough awareness that you're what do you call it, that you're able to change it a little bit. And that's what you would call lucid dreaming. Astral projecting is more active imagination. Lucid dreaming is kind of in between. Dreaming is just passive imagination. Man, I've been having weird dreams the last few months. Is anyone else? Is it just me? Anyway, once you do that, then you can begin kind of neutral. Let's call it neutral dreaming, because it's in between passive and active. Then you can begin to kind of neutrally dream while you're awake, and it's all around you. So you're hallucinating things around you. But try to just see what's around you in an imaginary state in your room. Try not to force anything yet. Okay? Just see what's around you. And if there's some weird, demonic creatures, then just evaporate them. Get good at focus on it and then just disperse it. Feel as if it's dispersing, or feel as if it's getting corroded by the light or whatever. You'll have to figure out these techniques yourself, and you'll notice that the internal pains are reflected in the external spiritual reality. So we've got these three levels. We've got the physical body, we've got the etheric body, which is a mental feeling body, which is what I go over in my energy cultivation, qigong, internal work videos. And then we have the third level of reality, which is the magical imaginary level, and they all link together. Now, if you've taken DMT, or I imagine salvia, ever tried that one, and probably high doses of things like acid and mushrooms, if you are conscious enough, you will notice that the imaginary hallucinations are relating to the internal world. As in, maybe as long as you don't get trapped into something, if you start to see that weird geometry, and that's when I talk about seeing light in the body and seeing geometry of light and all this kind of crazy shit, which probably I would imagine goes over most people's head. This is how you see it. You see it by looking at what is actually there in the imaginary world. So you got to kind of mentally get to the point where you've had enough experiences with this, where you realize, oh wait, my imagination isn't just for me to, jack off at night or whatever. To imagine little fantasies that I don't get in reality yet. It's not just for that. Or maybe use it for something a little more virtuous, like practicing martial arts or something. Whatever you do, it's not just that. There is actually imaginary reality in reality. There is literally, imaginary beings in reality. I know it sounds fucking crazy, but the more you practice this, the more you'll get it. Maybe you walk into a house that is supposedly haunted and you start to use this. You use this imaginary sight and look at things. Now, a very interesting thing is to look at people. I remember I gained this ability by, I took LSA seeds, Hawaii baby wood rose, and I was at a past friend of a friend's house, and there was a bunch of people there, and I was looking at them through this sight because it was hyper stimulated, this imaginary external sight. I was looking at people, and I would see either they would have an aura of water, so a weird wavy watery aura, or they would have a fiery aura, depending if they were kind of yin or yang. And after that, now I can just look at people, and I recommend you practice it. You look at people with this imaginary sight, and you might see little demons surrounding them, or little black kind of shadows in bad areas of them. And you'll see the aura, and the more you practice this, the clearer it'll be, because firstly it'll just be very unclear. But yeah, you can surprise people by telling them weird things that they know, but they don't know other people know. Well, most people don't know it. So yeah, you're just gonna have to practice that, but remember to summarize it, that passive imagination is just where you either, if you're in a dream, an internal dream, you're just allowing yourself to experience something. If you're in an external, it's more you're just looking at what ambiently exists. Active is when you start to impose your will upon either that internal dream or that external imagination reality. By implanting objects or manipulating the flora and fauna, the spirits in that object. To say if you've got a bad spirit, you're going to actively going to exercise it, and that's how that's what exorcists do. Chances are they're not this developed. They probably just know a little ritual, or they do something with a bit of conviction. But it works on one of these levels at least. Yeah, and then you just want to, of course, practice your imagination skills enough that you can get to this point, that you have control over the imagination, that you can passively and actively dream, etc., etc. And of course, if you need to email me, my email's down below. My other social media and such. Otherwise, my commercial stuff's down below. I recommend you check out my Gumroad. It's got all my books, my music, and some other stuff. And of course, if you want services, check out my Fiverr. And if you want this book, Mental Magic Basics, you can find it on Fiverr. Not Fiverr, excuse me. You can find it on Gumroad, a PDF for 10 Australian dollars, which is about 8 American dollars. Or you can also buy it for 8 American dollars on Amazon if you like the Amazon format. He's got lots of fun stuff relating to magic. It's got lots of imagination practicing stuff and lots of cool magic stuff. And with that, I hope you have a nice day, and goodbye.